Yeah, thanks everyone for joining our fifth and final webinar series on hands-on precision ag. These workshops have been funded by GRDC, so we appreciate their support. They're super keen on getting adoption of precision ag technologies in Australia, and it certainly has been lagging behind. So they're actively trying to get the information out to people, and the last 4 days have really been grower focused. All those videos are up on YouTube. And we'd be doing little case studies on each of those as well. I think some great stories there and great journey. And we're sort of focused on each region. So, across the northern growing area. These workshops are being run across the country as well. So, in a live format or online. Also supported by FarmLink and SPA, which is the Society for Precision Ag in Australia. So thanks for their support. I guess all the workshops that we've been doing highlights really importantly that ultimately everything has to run through a machine to get adopted on the ground or applied. So it's really important that we include the manufacturers in this whole discussion. It can't just be agronomic sort of things driving this. The whole loop has to be completed, I guess, where we do see an action on the ground, and more often than not, the machine's responsible for that. So I really appreciated representatives from John Deere, CNH, and now Trimble. I'd like to introduce Jason Mcneice, a fairly new appointee to the Trimble family and based in Toowoomba, but maybe, Jace, you start with a bit of your background. You've had a long history in this space, mate, like a lot of us. So, yeah, give us a bit of a background of where you come from and what you see as opportunities. And then you should be able to then screen share whatever you need to, mate. So take as long as you need to. And yeah, like I said before, any questions, throw them into the chat QA boxes anytime. We'll answer them straight away. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone for taking the time to be here today. And it is my pleasure to talk to you guys as a representative from Trimble. I work for the APAC region and, do have, because I live in Toowoomba, a pretty good focus on Australia and know the Darling Downs pretty well. I've spent the last 9 years out in the field, and I just echo Tim's comment on the machine is usually the thing that's actually implementing all these great analyses and platforms and tools that have been developed. These have their hands on the dirt, and so getting that to work has in the past been not a smooth process, but I think we're getting a lot better. And the other two presentations today have described a change and a progression that all this stuff is getting a little easier. So when I was asked to talk today and given the brief to be hands-on and practical in a virtual session, I scratched my head for a short time on what I could, show you guys and be practical. And what I came up with was 3 things that are takeaways that you can go out and implement today. And these might be simple sort of getting started tips that take very little investment in money or time, but they're critical for the point where you do end up going out and implementing some of these tools in the field. And I'll just start sharing my screen. So
I can see that, mate.
Great, good start. Let's see. So these are the practical steps that I'm going to cover today. One is setting up your digital farm, and this is things you can do regardless of what brand of machinery, screen or platform you're utilizing. Understanding your topography is an important part of and piece of the puzzle. And I'm going to go over some tools that might make that easier for you. And then discovering how easy prescriptions can be. And that'll be the one where I'll get into getting data in and out of displays in the old way, and USBs and carrying them around, and then there's some connectivity solutions that make that a whole lot easier. So starting with setting up the digital farm, why do we want to do it? There's a couple of reasons. There's conformity, across machines and contractors, making sure we're on the right page. Portability, quickly setting up machines and adopting new and existing digital solutions. And compatibility. Data is going to import so much cleaner when naming conventions are standardized and errors in selecting those wrong fields and those AB lines are reduced at the display end when you finally get to implement it. And so thinking of your physical farm and your digital farm, we all know that we're going to go out and we're going to do some AB lines in the field, and that we've been talking about controlled traffic for a long time. But thinking about it in a similar way, when you overlay digital products over the top, that like one of the other speakers mentioned today, if you draw boundaries or you have a data set coming in of a different projection type, does that actually match what's used in the paddock? And so with that, the place to start is where you store your operational data today. And some sources will be better than others, right? Some sources will have more priority or preference. And, you wouldn't take your guidance lines off your sprayer necessarily. In most cases, you'd most likely take it off the highest accuracy operation that you're doing. And so in most cases, your guidance lines will come from your planter and be stored on that tractor. And what we often see too is that boundaries, because they are so important for spraying, are stored on the sprayer. And so you don't have one complete data set there. And getting those together is really important to make sure that you have one master set. And you can start today by naming your guidance lines that are critical to your farm, so that if the data gets pulled in, that you know which ones they are, and start thinking about where are you storing your yield data as well. So, while that's not going to import into these sprayers and tractors, it's important to make sure that's grabbed off. And this is a good time to get it off the header before you get your technicians out or start pre-seasons or start doing software updates, so that you can have that display cleared off in case there's some infield reasons why it might be wiped or changed. So getting that cleaned and merged is your first step. And you can start that at the display. You don't have to use a online platform to start merging these data sets. You can start naming those AB lines and renaming your fields with a good naming convention, right from the get-go. So boundaries, a couple of discussions about boundaries today. This is really important, that if you want to transfer and have data portable between different platforms, you're going to need boundaries for that, and you're going to need them for all sorts of things, from end of row turns to exclusion zones, so you're not spraying out your creeks or other crops. And they can be created online. Yep, most platforms have that ability. And like another speaker mentioned, that has the accuracy of that image, right? So you're putting dots in at the edge of the field, and that may not line up exactly. And the New South Wales Government Spatial website really explains this the best. With the introduction of GDA 2020 this year, it's gone from something that was not often talked about to projections being something that we're starting to get a little variation with. And this is probably seen the easiest when your boundaries are generated from as applied data and then overlaid over a Google Earth map or a similar sort of map. And you might see that it doesn't line up perfectly. And so you don't want to create a prescription or a rate or a shutoff as part of, you know, a boundary that may be inside your field at some point if it's not so accurate. So the takeaway of this, you know, I could go into how the WGS 84, which in fact is what most platforms are built on, has been superseded, and now we've got GDA 2020, and it's about 2 meters difference. And then you add base stations adding in relational corrections into that, and you can get quite large differences. So yeah, the takeaway is physically record your boundaries with the best accuracy available. And while I'm on accuracy, I've just got a little plug for Trimble Pro Point, which is the new GNSS engine. So it's improving RTK and Trimble RTX performance, and Centrepoint benefits from RTK level accuracy and 4 times quicker convergence without a base station. So, you know, you might be getting along with range point okay for the moment, but when you go to apply boundaries and record those, you can probably, if you have the hardware unlocks for it, you know, get a 3-day unlock for Centrepoint and have that higher accuracy for that recording activity.
Jason, do you want to explain what you mean by WGS 84? There could be some people on here that...
Sure, yep. Okay, so WGS 84 is a best approximation of a wrap of an image around the world. That's the easiest way I can explain it. It was, like it suggests, brought about in 1984 in the sort of early days of GNSS, and probably only had GPS at that point. And it's also called the Web Mercator. So it's just the way that the map is stretched around the globe. And tectonic plates are on a continual movement over time. Australia's moving at 2 centimeters towards India every year. And so they update that with epochs every few years. And the GDA 94 was the next sort of shift. And it was the first shift into a more accurate imagery overlay to pin against the tectonic plate movements. And at that time, GDA 94 and WGS 84 were pretty much 1-for-1. Admittedly, our accuracy that we were measuring that with was probably, you know, fairly poor to test that. And so as the tectonic plates have moved, the government's decided that we needed a better way of referencing these high accuracy positions. And in preparation for things like autonomous road going vehicles, that if they had a 2-meter error, that could be disastrous for road going autonomy. And so, like I said earlier, Google Earth is still running WGS 84, and you know, different base stations, different displays are potentially using other projections. Does that cover that off? Is there any questions on how that applies to you guys in the field or the data sets that you're bringing in? I have a little more on the projections later on with the prescription maps, that
No, I
makes
just think,
sense.
yeah, for some that would have been possibly been a bit foreign, what you're talking about. So just
Yeah.
make sure that a bit of background there.
Yeah.
Generally, it's not a it's not a big drama at a farm level because the tectonic plate movement, you receive your base station and your fields are moving at the same rate. So it's not really a problem. It's when you start bringing other layers in and trying to match it back. So, you know, GDA 94, you know, is now, what's that, 16, 20, whatever it is. It's old, 26 years old. So that means that those every 7 centimeters, it's times 26 years. So you can get these movement errors. It's not a big drama for just normal operation in the field because the base station's moving as well and everything's relative. It's just other layers that come in is where you get problems.
That's right. And because the base station is moving with it, we now have a relational or, you know, our movement is, we're tied to that physical spot, right? And we're not going to see it until we bring in something else that's of a newer or different projection. And really the most likely way of seeing this is if you get an irrigator put in through a surveyed mark, the surveyor will potentially be using the current epoch and GDA 2020, and you've got to convert that back or likely create a new line that's then tied back to your base station projection. Any other questions around setting up your digital farm? In summary, many farms have different data sets and boundaries and AB lines and external prescriptions or services that are going to require some sort of starting point. And this is a bit of a blockage for people getting going in the first instance. And so regardless of what brand machinery or implements you use, standardizing those data sets, defining your digital farms is one of the most overlooked parts of the precision ag journey. And one that when you want to, at short notice, get started on prescriptions or something similar, you know, it can make that a little bit difficult. And so, you know, this is something you can do today to get yourself down that track. Start with one machine, work out which machine has the most important data and start with that. Make a backup copy, obviously, and then delete anything you don't use. Set some boundaries. Like we said, you can do it virtually, but do it with the best accuracy you can access. And the master setup file, you know, the idea would be that at some point your platform or your, you know, one machine has the master setup file, and ideally you would have that saved in a way that's easily sent out to platforms or used to set up in things like Trimble Connected Farm or in, you know, our API partners such as JD Operations Center or the Case IH platform. So that will save you a lot of heartache when you start to try and get your data into a platform. My next takeaway was understanding your farm topology. So together with yield maps and soil tests, understanding the topology on your farm can help identify problem areas, optimize rainfall capture in lower rainfall years, and mitigate damage from ponding and erosion in higher rainfall years. And I'm not talking specifically about irrigation versus non-irrigation and dry land. It's equally impactful in both. And you know, whether you get to the point of actually doing something about it or you know, moving dirt, I think it's something that, you know, your understanding of how it's impacting your farm, your yield, and where you can even operate. You know, the guys in sort of the western parts of Queensland or western parts of the Darling Downs will know. You know, if you can't drive through that melon hole, you're not actually farming that particular part of that farm. So one study said that the greatest untapped potential is increasing the percentage of precipitation captured by the soil that's subsequently used for transpiration relative to evaporation loss. So getting it in the soil better than having it running over the soil. That's my farmer version of that. And so we have a couple of ways that this can work out. So this is a dryland sheep operation, and they gained a 30% biomass or feed benefit by removing ponding, justifying the investment in this type of machine quite quickly. This wasn't a irrigated cotton sorghum farm. This was literally, you know, we have low spots that are getting waterlogged or not using the water correctly, and it justified making changes across the whole farm. On this one, this is obviously a lasered paddock, and this farmer analysed old cut and fill maps along with EM surveys to identify areas where the ameliorant or the products they apply could be better applied, and helped them understand why water absorption was variable across the field. So, you know, even if you're not planning on getting the bucket out and shifting dirt, I think it's something that we can all get advantage from by understanding your topology. And there's a free tool available that might help you guys with this. So the WM Survey 2 app is a product where you can, on an Android device, do it yourself surveys and see and export your elevation surveys. It can display the map, obviously. You can import design files that have been created elsewhere and view them in the field, so you can actually hold it up in front of your paddock and go, okay, we kind of understand how this is gonna be working out in the paddock before even putting anything into the ground. And you know, getting a survey done or a surveyor out to capture the elevation data at the accuracy needed for elevation work is quite an effort. And you know, especially now when people are shut by different borders and what have you, so the ability to do it yourself can get you there quicker, or at least, you know, give you the insight into what that looks like. You know, is there captured ponding? Is there you know, potential for erosion and those sort of things. It supports third-party GNSS receivers. So just on an Android app, you know, obviously the built-in GPS receiver is not going to do the job for elevation. You know, your elevation is twice as inaccurate with height versus left, you know, horizontally. So, you know, you can connect them by Bluetooth or other methods that they support and start doing those surveys out in the paddock today. You can record boundaries in there, and those boundaries will come out, you know, as quite accurate, and they'll be driven around the field. That'll help you to capture where you're trying to survey, but it can also be used, like we said earlier, for creating those driven boundaries around your fields. And you can export those surveys to various formats, and whether you continue on to do the automated designs for terraces and waterways, terraces being contour banks, or getting a third-party professional in to design something for you, you can choose to do that at a subscription level or paying someone to do those designs, or just use it as an insight and a layer within your farm management platform.
Hey mate, just a quick technical one on that. So how you say you'd have to have a Bluetooth compatible receiver, is that right? How would you connect your receiver to your app?
So that would depend on what receiver you have. We have the SPS 986 receiver that has Bluetooth built in, and that connects via Bluetooth, right? And we also have this app could run on a Precision IQ display, a GFX 750 or a TMX display. So,
because it's Android.
Because it's Android, right? Yep. And Android has many different ways of connecting third-party receivers to the Android system, and this uses the position that the tablet is using itself. So, if your receiver has a method of connecting and showing an Android device what its position is, then this will take that position and go from there. It does allow you to use Centrepoint RTX as a correction source for what we call core surveys or course surveys. And while you wouldn't do control off a Centrepoint subscription, it's a really good portable way of getting those types of surveys in.
Can I ask us what's the subscription worth, mate, to do that? Because that looks bloody good. Because I have a lot of clients asking for contour bank designs.
Yeah. So it's that Centrepoint subscription isn't necessarily to go on the tablet. It would be for your GPS receiver. So your 986, your Catalyst receiver, or on your actual GFX display or TMX display.
I was meaning the automated design part of WM.
Yeah. Look, the dealers need to identify which one suits best for you, and you get those automated design subscriptions through the Trimble dealer. So it's an annual fee, and I just can't remember what the Australian dollar version of that is, but yeah, I can follow up with that. So I don't know if this will work, and I'm going to take off my earpiece to do it.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah, I can still hear.
Wait.
I can hear you, Jace.
Okay, I'm just trying to get this video to play.
Yep, that's working. Just the volume's not coming through, that's all.
Okay.
You can, are you on YouTube?
Yep.
Okay, there was another way of doing a sharing of video, but that's not going to help you. Somehow we've got to get the audio coming through.
It's not picking up in my mic.
Just try it again. No, I can't hear anything, mate.
Okay. Maybe I'll just talk through it. So
yeah, that'll do.
Yep. Find something I can talk to. So here we have a survey showing the output or what's shown on it post survey. We have the water flow in directions, and then we can see potential drainage lines to start the landforming process. It's you can create basic designs, Android 9 devices, and these guys in this situation would be using it, in their farming display to do those records, and then do the survey. They do the boundary first and set some master benches, and then continue on to do the infills to make that surface throughout the middle. Then once you've got the surface, you can start viewing, where your contour banks might go, where your waterways might be, best to improve the water flow or reduce erosion. And then once you align where they are, this is an example in this actual image of terraces or contour banks where there's a guidance line created for each part of the profile. So each one of these lines, you can have as many as you want, is another guidance line that the display can drive to create those contour banks. And then down through here, you've got your waterways that are also created. And, there's two ways to export it. One is exporting it through just guidance lines, and then there's also control files that can be used for actually controlling implements. And so once it's saved, it is saved in there, perfectly. You can export it to email. You can send it in various formats. And these guys in this design have combined waterways and terraces to make the whole scenario work. They actually also, one piece that it glosses over a little bit is you actually design the profile of this, of what's being created. So, this is the bit I was looking for. So these points, each one of these points is a height on your contour. In this case, a waterway, but it works the same way for contour banks, where you can mark your approach and your peak and then off the other side, and then a guidance line is created for each one of these to drive it and carry on through. So rice levees, is not exactly flood irrigation bays. What that is ensuring that in a rice field, if there is a slope, and there usually is, that the lines that are put in to ensure that it has a very shallow and even water distribution across the whole field is done. So that's kind of more for the flood guys, but not so much our traditional flood irrigation bays. That side of it can still be designed in our displays and or created in a design, third party. So, if you're doing maybe some improvements to some laser flood irrigation bays, then you do your survey in this, and then give that to either your contractor or use the field level system to create the simple designs in the display. Yeah, and they control the machines and drive these guidance lines that are created. So free app, get in there, survey it, understand your topology, and pull someone else in when you need extra experience or assistance in the design side. So in summary, the how-to, survey it first, use Centrepoint if you need to, and you can do that course survey and verification. Then the analyze part. The analyze part is something that you could
or with imagery to identify problem areas. And then the design is a step that you may choose to take, or you may leave for the people that do this all the time. But I've often found that to understand where you want to shift your water, it's a great tool to visualize how that's going to work, even before going to the point of creating a full-blown design. So that option's there if that's useful to you.
I think that's really good, mate. I mean, these workshops are focused in the northern region, and the two biggest limitations to our production is waterlogging and soil erosion, and that ticks both of those boxes. It's bloody incredible that they've made that for free to get that whole concept going. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that's not even accounting for the yield potential losses. There was one here on the Darling Downs that had a 50% yield loss in cotton due to poor elevation, or it had sunk in certain areas, so there was some waterlogging even in the lasered country. So
we got a couple of years ago $1,200 a hectare loss from waterlogging on the Darling Downs, and dryland farming. That was not even in irrigated. So you can lose a lot of money real quick.
And those of us who've spent years trudging up and down head ditches with polypipes would understand quite well the difference that a nicely flowing bay can have on getting the water evenly distributed across the whole field. And those times where you're checking the furrows at 4 o'clock in the morning certainly give you appreciation for the ones that do end up working well. So but the point was, it's not just for the irrigated guys. This is something for even dryland farmers. So is there any questions on that? If you've got an Android device, you can go in and search WM Survey 2 and come up with the app, download it today, and talk to your dealer about how you can connect different devices to it, or third-party receivers. Reach out if you need help with that. I'm not tracking the questions in the.
We're up to speed with them at the minute, mate. So, but feel free, anyone, to throw some questions into QA chat. We'll keep track of those.
Perfect. Well, my last take-home message was about how easy prescriptions can be, and so there's 3 parts to getting started with this. One is, is my hardware VR application ready? And you would be surprised at what actually is able to take a prescription. And I've just got 3 types of hardware sitting along the bottom. One is the serial rate control, and these are like your old Amatron displays, which have a serial port in the back. They take that from various screens, and ours certainly control those. So it's not like you've got to invest necessarily in the isobus route or change everything that you're doing. If you've got some of these older ones, and a lot of us still apply anhydrous with a Raven rate controller, and almost all of those have serial rate input. So you could easily implement something like that.
Oh, I agree with you, mate. I've been on so many farms where a $200 cable and they're up and running in variable rate. They didn't even know it, because they had all the gear there, but not the connection, and someone to say, oh, by the way, that's all ready to go.
Yeah. And it's easier than you think. you know, you can step up to the Field IQ stuff. This does a brilliant job at controlling rates, and you can, you know, in some displays you can have up to 6 products, all, you know, 3 bins of granular and liquid as well, and other things going on at the same time. You know, that does a magic job. And then, you know, we're moving to Isobus as a standard, so that it's an install on your implement, and when you move that between machines, you know, you don't have to go in and set all your start and stop distances and everything up again, which, you know, while it's taken a while to get here, a lot of manufacturers are putting this stuff on, particularly if you get them out of Europe. You know, the spreaders are a prime example of this. Almost all of the new ones you get today are all Isobus ready, and we can hitch that up pretty quick. So, you know, the types of hardware you can have, like I said, the Raven, the Rawson hardware, and Amazon Hardy. Sorry, obviously Hardy's more on the spray side, but you know, there are people doing prescriptions with spray, and the Amazon. You know, some of the hardware, like the screens, require feature unlocks, and I'll go into all that stuff a bit later. So do I have appropriate prescriptions? And appropriate for my display. So the displays usually use only one RX map, and that needs to have, if you've got different rates for different channels, often needs to have those multiple channels within the prescription. And usually it'll describe a material type, and some displays only show the materials to be selected for the type of material that is specified in the prescription. You know, loading a prescription that suggests a liquid rate, those units are not going to match up with a granular type prescription. And you know, that's a display by display thing, but you know, get it out, put it in the right way, and you guys there at Data Farming know this as well as any, you know, and make it really easy for the guys to create and make prescriptions there that do work. Which brings us to the last one, which has been for some people the difficult part, and we've got some solutions that make this a lot easier. So the difficult part for some people that they've experienced is I drive out with a USB, I put it in my screen, and maybe it wasn't in the exact right folder, and I couldn't do it right then and there. And you know, if you're only a few minutes from the house and can pull out a laptop and change where it all sits, then all good. But you know, if you're not, that can get some people stopped. And so AutoSync for our Precision IQ displays, or Office Sync for the FMXs and older stuff, eliminates those USBs and can be quickly altered and, if necessary, and resynced in the field. So, you know, that's one problem point that's getting solved today. But I wanted to do a quick overview, and I did want to show you guys on an actual screen how to do this, but prescriptions are a difficult thing to do on a bench one, much easier if we're in a tractor. But the key things are getting the file type and location right. So it's all in Esri shapefile so this is particularly for the GFX 750 and the TMX 2050 running PIQ or Precision IQ software. We put it in the ag data folder and then in the prescriptions folder for this particular screen. And we want those 3 files in that folder. So the shape, the DBF, and the SHX. Now, optional for these, so any other files in that folder will get ignored, right? But if you do output a PRJ, so the projection in WGS84 or elsewhere, when you go to load that in some platforms, you find it can error because it's trying to match a projection that it doesn't know how to handle into WGS84. So if you do output the PRJ file, make sure that it's in WGS84, because that's how all the maps are lined up. And definitely for our PharmaCore platform, it's necessary to do that, or leave it out completely. But if you do put the PRJ in there, make sure it's in that projection. So there are some feature unlocks. So if you're just doing it through serial rate, then there's one unlock. But if you're doing it through Isobus, then you can either go with a pretty cost-effective single product task controller unlock, or a multi-product control unlock for multiple bins and things. Now, while you can have one channel controlled and then other channels just through the UT, it doesn't stop you having 10 or 12, and you wouldn't have that many, but you can have quite a number of ECUs on the network that you're controlling manually, and then having the prescription going to just one if necessary, or for an air cart with multiple bins using the multi-product control unlocks. So serial rate is like for your Amazon or your Raven, and TUVR just means Trimble Universal Rate, and that's the serial message that we're using to talk. And for controllers that are compatible with that, we get all sorts of section control and reporting on actual applied rate coming back into the display through that TUVR compatibility. And that's been around for a long time, 10 years or so. So it's well proven, and you see that by the types of controllers that are compatible with it. They've probably been sitting in your cab for at least the last 5 to 10 years maybe, and you may not have realized they were compatible. So then that's the sort of setup for it. Copying files to the display, in all cases with our screens, you've got to actually copy them to the display from the USB. It can't read it from the USB directly. And you basically just highlight the folder, and you can bring the whole folder over, or just the individual files in the prescription. And that's a pretty easy process, but auto sync, by the time your engine's warmed up and you're ready to go, you'll have the prescription down and ready to use. You've got to, in this GFX and TMX screen, select a field first, and then go and select the prescription. And while you probably can't see the details on this screen, this is just aligning the rate column with which controller and what rates you're going to use for that. So go through the step-by-step setup, and you won't have any problems. When you're ready to go, ensure you have an open task and obviously an active application channel. You can have application controllers connected, but they're not set as an application channel. And so just like you'd be ready to go and apply manually, make sure that happens, and then press that rate control adjustment button. It's sort of got the rate and the 2 arrows going around, and within it, the RX or prescription to assign that rate control to the current activity, to give the prescription control, and then you view it in layers. So, while I'd love to show you how easy this is on the screen, it's pretty good. And usually it's the copying the files to the display that's the difficult stoppage, but when you get it in the right folder, it just comes in naturally, and that one's pretty easy.
Yeah, just a lot of times, like we'll zip up files, so just make sure you unzip them and then put the files in there rather than the zipped file. because it won't be able to read the zip file.
In this one, yeah, and in all of our displays, we want them unzipped into this folder. Yeah, that's pretty critical. And you know, a lot of times when someone's driven half an hour out to a tractor and put the USB in it, didn't pull it across, that was the scenario. It just wasn't unzipped into the right folder. So we've got our FMX and XEN, or correction, the TMX 2050 running the FMX Plus. This can use Esri shapefile or AG file. Now, you know, that AG file option, I haven't seen it used very often, but it's a single file in that GDX. But regardless, you just put it into the prescriptions folder again. In these ones, because it's the FMX or FMX Plus app, it needs to be in the AG GPS folder rather than, if I just go back to the previous one, we're in the AG data folder. And it was an intentional move to separate these data types because of the different ways the displays record and import data. But just remember which one you're actually going to. You know, if your interface looks like this, then you know, make sure that you put it in the AG GPS folder. Again, there's various feature unlocks for variable rate, for isobus task controller or serial rate. Talk to your dealer about which one applies to your particular implement and which one's going to work in your screen. And generally, you know, between the FMX and the TMX, they're quite similar in you know, which unlock you need for that. So to copy the files to the display, in this one, you go from the home screen into the data transfer area and select your prescriptions folder on the left and press the copy, and it moves it over to show that it's on your screen in the right. You don't copy individual files on this particular display software, but you know, you just get that whole folder and bring it across. When the feature's unlocked and the prescription's available in the system, it goes searching for it when you start opening a screen, and you'll see the prescription page showing up, and you just select which prescription you want and the rate column that you're intending to assign to your channel of control. And one that often stops people, you know, just because we don't think of it that much, is ensuring that the master switch box is on rate 1 for prescriptions. That's the only position. You know, you won't get any prescription control on rate 2. It's linked to that one. Any questions on the FMX? And these are good ones to maybe take a snapshot of later once it's on YouTube and take with you as a field guide. You know, just one clean image to say, okay, I've got a FMX screen or a TMX 2050, and I want to go out and do my prescriptions. These are the things that I need to make sure I've got right. And then we get to our CFX 750, very similar to the FMX in that it uses the AG GPS folder, and you know, those 3 files that we're familiar with by now. And there's only one passcode. It covers variable rate and TVR, serial control, all those things. So get that one going. And with this one, so those of you familiar with the CFX 750, when you open it and start it up, it will already have a field active. You've actually got to go and, if that's the field you want, you've actually got to go and open that field again to get to the prescription selection area. So press on field after you've, you know, actually did get it in the first place. You go to settings and data management and copy it over there. But then once you go to selecting that prescription, open the new field, even if it's the one you're currently using, the display then searches for prescriptions and shows them up. Just press the big old green tick next to the prescription that you want and configure your rate columns, and away you go. And once you're in the paddock or it's loaded, you'll see a P in the next to the sort of target rate description. And again, make sure your master switch box is on rate 1. So even as far back as the CFX 750, we still had this ability to use variable rate and serial rate control on these, and the prescriptions work just as well on that one. Now the types of implements you can control are reduced on this one. It didn't have isobus back then. You'll need the current displays to do that. So, summary, try it out. There's no point getting a prescription and going to the paddock only, on the day that you want to get going and trying to work all this stuff out. We've got demo unlocks and things that will help you get set up, prior to the season, and when you try it out, have a think about the other ways that you can gain value out of this, because they can help standardize your rates and the products that are applying. And I'm finding people are wanting to do this even if they're not applying by zones and it's a whole field. It's an easy way to ensure that the right product gets applied at the right rate in the field, and a bit of quality control when you've got newer and experienced operators. This is really helping out with that. So yeah, again, your steps are check your implement. Most new implements are going to have this capability, and can be easily upgraded to Field IQ and isobus control. Try out the prescriptions, get familiar with how that goes into the display. And again, like I said, there's feature unlocks available for sort of 10 days. So, get in and try that. And then, go from there. Make it easier with AutoSync, data transfer, plan work. So you can have work orders that include both the prescription, the AB lines, the products, and all of that embedded. So that's something you can build on. Any questions on getting prescriptions into Trimble displays, or any other questions at all?
Just one came through, just probably back a bit, but it's just explain the differences in your screen. So you got, there's lots of FXs and
Sure.
things in there. Just generally what the screens are now, because you certainly Trimble has certainly changed quite a bit in recent times.
So we sell Trimble displays to many OEM manufacturers, and they'll have their own names. And the main current display is the GFX 750. And we've also got its bigger brother, the TMX 2050. And these are running PIQ or Precision IQ software, which is our sort of most advanced software that runs best on the Android operating system. This is like your tablet style screens. And then to make compatibility a bit easier, we also made the ability to run the FMX software on the TMX 2050. So when you open that TMX up, you get the ability to choose whether you're using Precision IQ or the old FMX software, and we call that FMX Plus, I guess, because it's running on a newer screen. And that has all the features that FMX had, and that's why the same screen can be you know, here under the Precision IQ and here under the FMX or FMX Plus. And then the CFX 750 is our sort of little brother to those, and it's been around for a long time. We sell this to OEMs under various names. Some of you might be familiar with FM 750s, branded differently, but they're CFX.
Any more questions? Fire away while we've got him.
While waiting for them, yeah, thanks for giving us the time. If there's any other questions you want to reach out with later on, you know, feel free, you know, or put it through your dealer. You know, they're really experienced at all this stuff. It's sort of bread and butter stuff now. So,
and I guess you should mention the name change recently, well, not recently, but a while back. So Vantage is the sort of new naming for dealers, mate?
Yeah, you'll find some of our dealers have branded as Vantage dealers, and you know, that was to you know, give an idea of how we can help with or how Precision Ag's integrated into agronomy, and even though those dealers don't do, you know, your traditional agronomy stuff, it's all integrated now, and you know, searching for a Vantage dealer, you know, will get you a high level of service, and there's standards that they meet to keep that title. It's all about getting you guys better service. So, you know, you'll find most of the businesses will be able to be found, you know, under you know, Vantage and your area.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate your time. Yeah, put some really clear messages there. It's excellent to see, and there's instant value to be gained from what you've just shared with us. So thanks for your time, for sharing that, and yeah, and your experiences. Thanks, mate.
No problem at all. Thank you.